Good morning and Happy New Year, 2021 already. I'm the Reverend Kevin Tarsa, serving this 25-year-old congregation, the Unitarian Universalist Community of the Mountains in Grass Valley, California. I hope you've had a meaningful holiday season, everyone, and that you are healthy and well as those that you love. Welcome to our new theme of imagination. Gail Johnson-Vaughn is our worship associate all month long. Beth Caro is here this morning, as she is each Sunday, to assist you via the chat. If you have questions or need assistance, you can type in a note directly to her if you wish. To bring us into our time together, a song that we sung each of the past several Januaries, drawing on the text of Alfred Lord Tennyson's poem, Ring Out Wild Bells, with special thanks this year to all of you who rang bells at home and recorded yourselves, and with special thanks to Jordan Thomas Rose for assembling all those videos. I know it can make one self-conscious to sing at home all by yourself. I encourage you to sing out anyway and to ring in the new year together, to ring in love, hope, peace, joy, faith, and justice with all the heart you can muster.
Ring out wild bells to the wild sky, the flying cloud, the frosty light. The year is dying in the night. Ring out wild bells and let it die. Ring in love, ring in hope, ring in peace and justice. Ring in faith, ring in joy, ring in love, ring in love. Ring out the old, ring in the new, ring happy bells across the snow. The year is going, let it go. Ring out the false, ring in the true. Ring in love, ring in hope, ring in peace and justice. Ring in faith, ring in joy, ring in love, ring in love. Ring out the grief that saps the mind. For those that here we see no more. Ring out the feud of rich and poor. Ring in redress to humankind. Ring in love, ring in hope, ring in peace and justice. Ring in faith, ring in joy, ring in love, ring in love. Ring out false pride in place and blood, the civic slander and the spite. Ring in the love of truth and right. Ring in the common love of good. Ring in love, ring in hope, ring in peace and justice. Ring in faith, ring in joy, ring in love, ring in love.
Good morning, and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Community of the Mountains, and welcome to 2021. My guess is that all of us are definitely ready for a fresh start. I'm Gail Johnson Vaughn, and honored to serve as your lead worship associate for the month of January, ably joined each week by Wendy Wernig on camera, and the rest of our worship team hard at work behind the scenes. We all welcome you to a month of Sundays where we will explore what it means to be a people of imagination. What is the place of imagination in our lives, our spiritual, emotional, intellectual lives, especially in these challenging times? And how does our imagining shape the future that we enter? This is the time of the year that we tend to do a lot of reflecting on the past year. Yeah, it was a tough one with some silver linings. And yes, all that doesn't get swept away with the New Year's Eve confetti. We're going to live with it. Also, it's a time when we look to the future, imagining what will come. And surprise, surprise, there is more than the past and the future. There is the present, the gift of now, the most powerful time. It is this space that Viktor Frankl is speaking of when he says there is space between stimulus and response. And response is the space where we have the power to choose our response. To choose our response. In our response lies our freedom, our personal power, our growth. And the now is where imagining lives. And the truth is, imagining has immense power to create the future into which we move. So be mindful of whether your imagination is fueled by hope or by worry. Those of you who know me well know I'm a kid person. I love their ability to imagine, to make manifest the things that they do imagine. I know they're our future, and more they speak out to act as our conscience. They deserve our respect. They deserve our attention. And frankly, we dare not squander the ideas and energies they bring us. Over this month, you'll see them popping up in our services from time to time. They're so easy to love and to respect. They fuel my gratitude and fortify my hope for better days. Look around. There are so many of you with us this morning. Welcome. I see many names of people who feel like family to me. Welcome home. I see names of some of you who've been joining us for many Sundays, but I haven't got to meet yet. Welcome. I'm so looking forward to being together face to face. If you'd like to do a short howdy-do phone call sometime, just tell me in the chat. I'd love that. And a special welcome to those of you with us for the first time, some from very great distances. Being able to do that is definitely one of the silver linings of this challenging time, and maybe something we'll keep doing. We each bring to this service our unique selves with our individual feelings, hopes, concerns, and joy. We each bring our unique history, challenges, and aspirations. All of each of you is welcome here at UUCM. I'm so glad you joined us today, and I'm eager to see what the new year will bring as we bring our best together. Welcome.
We light this chalice to illumine our reflections on the year we have left behind, the windows of awareness it has opened, the challenges we faced, the unexpected gifts we were given. We light this chalice to shine on the path ahead as this new year unfolds into days and weeks and months and years, bringing its own challenges, gifts, and opportunities to create the life, the world that our hearts imagine. And most of all, we light this chalice to reveal the wisdom of this very moment, the wisdom of now, where choices can be made to live from the lessons offered to us from our past, and to manifest the life, the world our hearts imagine. May it be so.
Thank you, Linda. It's great to see you. I invite everyone to light your home chalice if you have one, as I light the chalice here at UUCM.
In our commitment to be in respectful and right relationship with the descendants of this area's indigenous people, we place a small basket of black oak acorns on our altar each week. In so doing, we remind ourselves and acknowledge that the Nisenan people are still here among us today, though nearly invisible, that we are on Nisenan land that was never ceded, and that the original tribal families have yet to recover from the near genocide of their people. As residents, or like me, a sometimes visitor in Nisenan land, let us support the Nevada City Rancheria Nisenan tribe in efforts to stabilize their people, as well as their campaign to restore federal recognition.
Good morning. We start a new month of January. We are also starting our new emphasis on imagination. So I'm going to ask you to imagine yourself back in the year 2000, when we were a much smaller congregation, but we were meeting in a brand new church that we had taken over from a mortuary. We had spent 5 years after that 2000 date getting things ready to pass all of our ADA problems. We wanted to make this place safe as well as comfortable. So we did a lot of changing around. By 2005, we had gone through 2 interim ministers. We were with the second one, Reverend Atkinson, who was helping us to get ready for our calling of our very first settled minister. She also was making sure that we had all our committees in shape so that we could act like a really live, good, up-to-date congregation. We had a very active worship committee, and since I lived here, I belonged to just about every committee, including the worship committee. We had our programs pretty well set up with Reverend Atkinson. But when it came to the Sunday between Christmas and New Year's, we drew a blank. Reverend Atkinson was going back to be with her family. Half of the worship committee was also going to be out of town. And the ones who were here were having guests coming in. And we thought, well, we could just close the church. But they protested and said, no, we need to be open. We need to do something. We want to bring our friends in to show them our brand new church. Somebody mentioned Janus. Janus, the Roman god who looks both ways, backwards and forwards. And I'd seen a picture of him. I pulled it up and we thought, okay, he's different. Let's us be different too. Let's change things around. So instead of having chairs facing the front with everybody looking at everybody's back, we made an oval so that everybody was looking at everybody else. Then we decided, okay, we'll do something else too. We won't have coffee. We have cider left over from Halloween. Let's have spiced apple cider. And when people come in the doors, they'll pick up a cup, they'll sit down, they'll be invited to enjoy some hot apple cider. And people from the congregation previously had been asked if they would like to provide cookies. So we had plates of cookies available. So when people came in, they were encouraged to sit within the oval, to have a cup of hot cider, and sample a cookie if they so wished. And that's how we started. We put in the usual things. We welcomes and things like service reminders of what was going to be happening further on in January, and explained how Janus came to be our inspiration for this service. It went pretty well. I started out showing people what we were going to do, because as it turned out, the congregants who had assembled were the program for the morning. I told them what I had liked about the previous year, how we had accomplished all our ADA guidelines, and how we were ready to really welcome a brand new minister very soon. Then I had people spotted in the audience that I had talked to, and I handed the microphone to them. And they gave their last year and their coming year presentations. When they finished, they passed the microphone to the next person, who had the choice of participating or passing. There were quite a few passes that first time, because nobody knew what was going on. But once they got into the theme, they would come back and they'd say, oh, I like the microphone. And then they would present their parts of how they felt about last year and how they felt about the next year. And that's how it went. We had in excess of 25 people there. That was pretty good. But the overall opinion after the service was that this was a great Cider Sunday. And that's the name that stuck with it. So Cider Sunday became a norm for the succeeding years until a little later on when things changed a bit. So this isn't the Sunday between Christmas and New Year's, but in a way, it still feels a little bit like it. And that's kind of a capsule, you might say, a nutshell of what Cider Sunday is.
Meditation by Robert R. Walsh. He calls it It Matters. Invite us into this time of reflection. He writes, I knew a man who had printed on his stationery this proverb: nothing is settled, everything matters. It established a certain ambiance for reading his letters, as if to say, what you are about to read is to be taken seriously, but is not final. I remember him and his proverbs sometimes, especially when it seems impossible to change the world or myself in any significant way. Times like the beginnings of new years. Sorry, Jim, I say. It's not true that nothing is settled. In the past year, choices have been made. Losses have been suffered. There has been growth and decay. There have been commitments and betrayals. None of that can be undone. A year ago, no one knew whether during this year one person would become pregnant, another would get cancer, another would take a new job, another would have an accident. But now it is settled. One day this year, I was present when someone needed me. Another day, I was busy doing something else when I was needed. One day, I said something to a friend that injured our relationship. Another day, I said something that enabled a person to see life in a new way. The best and the worst of those days is now written. All my tears of joy or sorrow cannot erase it. If I stay with my meditation long enough, though, the reply comes. Robbie, says Jim, you have misunderstood the proverb. It's true that you cannot escape the consequences of your actions or the chances of the world. But what is not settled is how the story turns out. What is not settled is what the meaning of your life will be. The meaning of a life is not contained within one act or one day or one year. As long as you are alive, the story of your life is still being told, and the meaning is still open. As long as there is life in the world, the story of the world is still being told. What is done, but nothing is settled. And if nothing is settled, then everything matters. Every choice, every act in the new year matters. Every word, every deed is making the meaning of your life and telling the story of the world. Everything matters in the year coming. And more importantly, everything matters today.
I know this rose will open. I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will open. I know this rose will I know my fear will I know my fear. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will I know this rose will I know this rose will I know this rose I know my fear will burn away. I know my soul will unfurl its wings. I know this rose will I know this rose
The word I chose for 2020 was songlines. A songline in this instance is an Australian Aborigine musical map. The words of the song describe the landscape, and I've heard it said that if you know the songs, you can sing your way across Australia. I wrote the word songlines on this stone and put it on my altar, and every time I noticed it, I thought, oh yes, that. I love the ideas of singing the journey and of music married to geography, creating a map for finding my way. At the beginning of 2020, I promised myself that I would do my best to sing every day, even if it was just to hum a little hum, as Winnie the Pooh might say. It's lovely to make a bit of music every day, usually while walking in the company of my beloved Australian cattle dog, Lulu. The very notion of a musical map is, to me, both magical and rich in metaphor. I would like to have gone deeper with this evocative word, songlines, in 2020, but there were a few other things going on. So I shall carry this wondrous idea into 2021 for continued exploration, singing as I go. Perhaps Lulu and I will write the songs of our walks around the neighborhood.
I'm so appreciating hearing people's stories of their journey with their word from this past year. Years ago, as I served as the accompanist for a set of musicals, one of the young singers that summer had the most spectacular voice. Every time she sang, she melted your heart with her warm, beautiful sound. I loved hearing her sing, and I loved accompanying her on the piano. In one of the shows, after a very tender song, the music would stop for some spoken dialogue. And then, out of nowhere, out of the silence afterward, she would sing the final tender phrase, starting a cappella with no instruments, no cues. And then when she reached the very last note, the band and I would join her and complete the piece. It was a magical moment every time. One night, the rest of the band and I were waiting in that dialogue silence for the sweet entrance of hers, and she came in beautifully in a completely different key. It had never happened before. The rest of the band and I, who were behind a scrim, looked at each other and shrugged. And while she was singing that final phrase, I quickly tried to figure out where she was by playing various piano notes on the piano as quietly as I could. Now, had I had perfect pitch or been more skilled, I might have known exactly where she was, but that was not me. However, I did have just enough time to find what key she was in, to hold up my hand to signal the band to wait. And I joined her for her last note in the new key, which I mouthed to the band as they played the closing pattern. The rest of the band gradually found it, joined in, and everyone was there by the final chord. In a lovely irony, the line she sang at the very end was, I think, a recap of a line sung earlier in the show by her boyfriend. The phrase, "When I look at you, I know I chose right." She thought we had performed magic on her behalf that night. In truth, it was more practical than that, though it was indeed magical in its way. I look back at this past year, and that's what it's felt like many times. Things here at UUCM were picking up really nice momentum last year at this time. There was great energy, we were making plans, and I was getting ready to accompany those plans. And then in March, the song came in a completely new and unexpected key. And like many of you, I've been trying to use my ear and my heart and my head to locate the new key and to adjust and adapt, except that the new key kept changing too. And then the song itself shifted and keeps shifting. The song in motion right now is not about to end anytime soon, or even to land on a temporary cadence. We are in the middle of the middle. We're in the middle of the in-between, trying to find the new keys as we stay at home, miss our families and friends, and consider our futures and our place in the universe. As people's political actions astound and confound and alarm, as the painful hierarchies of whiteness and brownness and blackness get torqued and threatened and reactive, as ungodly amounts of wealth get sucked into fewer and fewer hands. When Gail and I met via Zoom to explore this month-long theme of imagination, Gail noted Viktor Frankl's wisdom, the wisdom she mentioned earlier, that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Gail noted that although the classical image of Janus, which we use each year, shows faces looking forward and backward simultaneously, there's actually a dynamic space between the two faces. We're approaching imagination this month through that lens, through that space, inviting us all to spend time and attention there, here, in the in-between, even though the emotional pull is to reach towards some final chord that will feel comforting. To complete the quote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Imagination is, of course, about imaging, being able to see in our mind's eye something that is not immediately available to our physical perception. Maybe something that does not yet exist. Maybe something that's simply currently out of sight. As I think about imagining from this vantage point into the future, which is what January invites, I'm aware that my ability to see is limited by what I've already seen and what I expect to see. If I use only what I already know or think I know as building blocks and simply repurpose and fast forward those into my vision of a desirable future, I'll miss important pieces of what I need to take into account now in order for such a future to be realized. The world is not exactly as I thought it was, and my imagination needs to include that. I need to take into account that a significant portion of the population is fired up by and passionate about authoritarian figures and ways, and willing to reach their desired ends at any and all costs. I need to take into account my own benefit from and personal contributions to ongoing gender and racial inequities. I need to factor in the ways that life will not return to the normal that I knew, and the ways that it might. I need to take into account what has changed in me in the past 9 months. The imagination we need right now requires the freedom, the space, and the openness for new connections to be made within our minds and hearts, between things we've not previously connected. The space between the stimulus of all that's happened and our response is giving us an opportunity to soften, not our values, but our way of perceiving, so that we can take in more of what we need to take in and link more of what we need to link imaginatively, so that the choices we make will be more intentional and effective. Angela Oguntala, an American futurist who resides now in Copenhagen, spoke to this space between stimulus and response in this way. Angela said, "You can either think that the world is getting better or will be much better than it is now, or you can think that the world is getting worse. But that continuum isn't as important to me, actually, as this idea of, do you think you have agency in this world that is either getting better or worse? When it comes to our futures, we have hope, we have fear, but sometimes we forget that we also have influence. And that means we can choose the futures we want to work towards. Nothing is written in stone," she concludes. The Unitarian Universalist tradition already names that nothing is written in stone. And UUCM's mission statement names the qualities of the future this community commits to work toward: a world more compassionate, a world more sustainable, a world more just. And both the tradition and the mission ask us to recognize our choices and our influence. And while nothing is written in stone, we did invite you last January to choose a word for the year and to write it on a stone. Not a New Year's resolution, but a word that could be your spiritual traveling partner for the year as you consider your choices and your influence. Dan Britton, the author of One Word, writes that 50% of all New Year's resolutions fail by the end of January, and that 9 out of 10 resolutions fail during the year. That is certainly my experience. He and others recommend instead choosing a word for the year, a ritual that doesn't place us in that failure bind, and that offers us a continual invitation to bring our imagination to whatever's going on in our world and in our lives. The word becomes a dance partner, a lens, a conversation partner for the year. Once again, we invite you to take the entire month of January to discover your word for this new year. Dan offers some advice, including encouraging us to be patient and silent and to let our word reveal itself to us rather than trying to chase it down and pin it down and choose it. Let it find you, he suggests. For us perfectionists and maximizers, don't stress, he advises. There'll be other years for other words, and there are many words that could serve you well this year. There's no perfect word. Have fun with it, he says. As you're looking for your word or watching for it to find you, look in, look up, look out, he suggests. There's no telling from which direction your word will arrive. And even if you didn't do much traveling with last year's word, Dan suggests finding a new one for this year. Let each year stand on its own with all the blessings and burdens. Start this year fresh, he advises. As T.S. Eliot wrote in Little Gidding, last year's words belong to last year's language, and next year's words await another voice. Each week this month, we'll help you explore the possibilities and the process, and as inspiration, we'll hear from people about their journey with the word this past year. We encourage you to take your time, open your heart, open your awareness, soften your gaze. Let a word come to you. At the end of the month, we'll invite you to identify your word, to mark it, and perhaps to help consider what this congregation's word for the year might be. In her memoir, Why Religion, historian of religion Elaine Pagels points out that what each of us needs and what we can engage changes throughout our lifetime. She writes very movingly of the death of her young son, followed shortly thereafter by the death of her husband. What matters, she writes, and this is where religion comes in, is how we engage the imagination around the experiences that shape, shatter, and transform us. Experiences that precipitate us into new relationships with ourselves and with others. We're here to help each other engage our imagination, I say, as our life experiences shape, shatter, and transform us. No matter how personal and individual the journey feels, we are here in this voluntary and intentional community in order to help each other discover and make meaning from all that our lives hold, even as the keys and the melodies change suddenly and without our permission or expectation. We are here to help each other look in and look up and look out to the world and the well-being of others. We are here to help each other recognize our choices, to choose the future we want to work towards, and to realize our agency in the world. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Let's take our time in that imaginative space this month. given all the stimuli we've had this past year, so that the responses we choose, each and together, will indeed lead to growth and freedom for us and for the world we love so tenderly and so tenaciously. So may we be. And to spark your reflection on your potential word for this coming year, one more sharing from a member, this time from Pam Kaiser, Vice President of your Board of Trustees. I look forward to the time when more of you can interact with Pam in person. She's been a marvelous presence on the board on your behalf, and you'll be glad to get to know her.
The word I chose for 2020 was acceptance. Little did I know when I chose that word how often I would have to come back to it during this year. I originally chose the word because I was feeling like I wasn't doing a very good job of accepting things that were outside my control. And I was working awfully hard to change those things to bring them back within my control. And it wasn't working very well for me. So acceptance was the word I chose, and I thought it was going to be applied to some of my relationships and my activities in my normal daily life. And then COVID came along and changed everything and so clearly moved everything in my life, it seemed, out of my control. So very frequently throughout this year, I even have my little stone with acceptance written on it. I came back to this stone. I kept it nearby. I used it like a worry bead, often handling it and reminding myself to accept the things that I couldn't change, the things that were outside my control, to just try to be within all of the many changes that were happening. And what I found was that when I'm able to accept, just accept and let be, that then I'm able to experience other feelings like gratitude and gratefulness for the things that I do have, the things that have kept me safe during this year and my family safe during this year, have kept me able to have connections with others, things like Zoom, a roof over my head, beautiful places that I can walk, lots of friends that I can Zoom with, the ability to have food, to be able to do curbside pickup even at markets. Those things are things that I've come to be grateful for. So acceptance has turned out to be a key word for me. I would say in lots of ways it helped get me through this year. I don't know what my word for 2021 will be, but I'm hoping it's a word that guides me as well as acceptance did. And I'm hoping it's a word that I can choose in a more joyous time.
When I was a kid, my family did not go to church of any kind, but I was really curious what the fuss was all about. So when a neighbor girl invited me to go to church with her, I gladly accepted. Stacy, my neighbor, took me to Redeemer Baptist Church. To say that it wasn't a good fit for me is an understatement. Over the years, my curiosity about spiritual community only grew, but I just couldn't find one that worked for me. After checking out what was out there, I couldn't even imagine a place like UUCM. In fact, when May and Jerry Lawrence invited me to visit, I had been deeply wounded by another community, and I was skeptical and wary. Over the many years of being a visitor, the trust and love of this community was built. Imagine my surprise when the thought of becoming a member entered my mind and I didn't run from it. Since making that commitment, UUCM has become a very important part of my life. One of the many things I love about this community is that we share our resources. This month, we're partnering with Sierra Roots, a local nonprofit helping the houseless in countless ways. I know Janus O'Brien, who started the organization, and a bit about her story. It fills me with warmth and gratitude to know that we are supporting her work. Giving in these times is even easier than it was in person, but I do miss the ritual of seeing the basket get passed hand to hand around the room. However you choose to give this week, imagine the passing of the baskets as you do.
Although we're not passing the basket in person, your generosity remains essential to our ability to sustain the work of our community. There are several ways to contribute. You may text an amount to 833-579-0483, give via our website at uugrassvalley.org, via PayPal at paypal.me/UUCM, or mail to UUCM 246 South Church Street, Grass Valley, California, 95945. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your generous giving. Let us dedicate these offerings to support the most vulnerable among us and creating a world more equitable and just.
Thank you to Gail Johnson-Vaughn for serving as worship associate, for inspiring, colorful backgrounds for our slides this month. Wendy, thank you for leading the offering invitation each week this month. Beth Carroll for being chat host, Bob with his birthday tomorrow for being behind the scenes so steadily, And to our video editors this week, Conrad, Gail, myself, and Jordan. To Jordan for the music, for assembling those bells. All of you who rang bells, we'll thank in a moment. To our readers, it's so lovely to see you, Desiree and Linda, Torin, Anita, and Wendy. Thank you. Thanks to our first word sharers for the month, Susan Sanford and Pam Kaiser. I really appreciate it. To all those of you who rang bells so playfully, that was wonderful. Christy, Bob, Dave, George, Janet, Suzanne, Elizabeth, Eileen, Anne, Josephine, Jules, and Keelan, Carol, and the Scher family. And to Shanti Emerson for once again coming in to set up a really beautiful setting for us for this morning. In a moment, we'll be singing and having closing words, but before we get there, I want to name my appreciation for Anita and name that she's a role model in her willingness and ability to keep finding the new keys. Year after year, it's an inspiration, Anita. Thank you for adapting to the world and to the life of the congregation as it keeps shifting. You inspire me. So with that, I invite you to join in singing our closing song, I Am Willing. It's an aspirational song that I hope we'll hold in mind and heart all month.
I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. There is hurting in my family, there is sorrow in my town, there is panic in the nation, there is wailing the whole world round. For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. May the children see more clearly, may the elders be more wise, may the winds of change caress us, even though it burns our eyes. For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. Give me a mighty oak to hold my confusion. Give me a desert to hold my tears. Give me a sunset to hold my wonder. Give me an ocean to hold my fears. For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up to the light of change. For I am open and I am willing, for to be hopeless would seem so strange. It dishonors those who go before us, so lift me up
Let us sing The Magic of Imagination by Susan L. Van Dresser. Let us sing the magic of imagination by which we know one another and learn the lives of eras gone by. Let us sing the magic of creation by which we build the world of our soul and teach its wisdom to others, young and old. Let us sing the magic of our lives together, holding and shaping by the movement of breath from heart to lung, all new life that is to come. Go now with singing. Go now with magic in your fingertips. Touch this world with life.
Let us indeed touch this world with life. Several people have been appreciating the tie-dye this morning, a tie-dye that Beth Caro and her beloved Angelo created for me. So I named that Joy, and the colorfulness that seems helpful this time of year. I invite you once again to know yourself connected, to know yourself linked to each other with as much or as little as you may know. Again, if it serves you, I invite you to hold your hands out to strengthen that sense of being connected beyond your immediate boundaries. And together, let's share this benediction that the community offers out loud together when we're in person. Let us carry the flame of peace and love until we meet again. Indeed, so may it be. We'll see you next Sunday as we continue our theme, looking at our interpersonal relationships and imagination.